Hello and welcome to Path to Power. This is a series with Women's Energy Network. Thanks for joining today. My name is Brittany Ramos, and I have the honest to heaven's pleasure of interviewing a really amazing woman. So JeNae Johnson is the founder and CEO of CTM Unlimited, and we'll unpack a little bit more about what they do. But in true JeNae fashion, that's not all she is. Actually, like most women, that's not all she is. She's actually also a best-selling author. She's won more words than I can hope to ever rattle off or read off of a slide. She's a wife, a mother. She gives back to the community. She's a longtime member of WEN, and she actually sits on our Global Advisory Council right now. So she's the perfect person to kind of have a conversation with. So JeNae, is there anything else you want to add before we kind of get in and dig a little bit deeper as to kind of who you are at a high level?
Yeah, I'll give a little bit, but I do like to sort of uncover this through storytelling. So I think as we get into some of the conversations and questions, it will reveal more about me. So first, I want to say I'm really grateful to be here, and I appreciate you tapping me for this interview. It's truly an honor. And as far as what CTM does, CTM Unlimited, we are a consulting firm, and the best way I can summarize it is that we solve workplace problems. And those workplace problems vary from year to year, from era to era. The biggest workplace problem, well, the biggest two that we're solving right now are the people side of AI adoption, because no one has that figured out, and really caring for the people and looking out for the people while the tech is moving quickly. And then the other side of it is just all of the change and disruption, everything from return to office to reorgs to, this company merged with another company. Like there's a lot of that that's happening. A lot of like changing in size and scope and, location of businesses. And so we're helping a lot with that. That's a lot of our work this year, but it spans the gamut. Most of it is rooted in change management. Most of it is rooted in making sure there is a business case that we're tying back to the work, and really developing leaders and teams. So we are on a mission to create legendary workplaces. And if you can solve these people problems, your workplace will be legendary.
Okay, and who can tell it better than JeNae herself? The one thing I didn't get into, because last I checked, I've never met anyone yet who went to school to become a consultant, but can you give us a little bit of your education background, kind of where it all started? And we'll go through the path in a minute, but where'd you go? What were kind of your first, what you thought you were going to be when you grew up moments when you were younger?
So, such a funny thing. I actually did go to school to be a consultant. I just didn't know that that's what I was going to school for. I had no idea that that was a career path, but some of the things that I've learned definitely helped me be a better consultant. So I graduated from Howard University. I love Howard University. It shaped a lot of who I am. A lot of my identity was shaped while I was there. And I'm still involved in our alumni network now. And I majored in communications, but our particular degree program was not just broadly communications, it was like strategic comms, and they changed the name over time, so it's called something else now. But essentially, we learned everything from like legal communications and how to read through legal briefs, how to write legal memos. We also learned about interpersonal, intrapersonal communication. So there were all these elements that really helped me become a stronger communicator, helped me with like actual inquiry, like how to ask good questions to get great responses, which a lot of that serves me really well as a consultant and leading a consulting firm.
Love that. All right, I stand corrected. It may have not been where you thought you were going to go, but
but I wish, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brittany. I wish someone would have told me, like, exposed me to the world of consulting, because what I really thought I was going to do, I thought I was going to go to law school. And that was only because I didn't know what else to do. It was sort of like, I know I'm great at writing, I'm great at speaking, I believe in advocacy, so I should be a lawyer, right? But I didn't, it's only because that was the only thing that equation sort of added up to, not because I really just had this passion to be a lawyer. And so one of the things that I've done over the years is going back to Howard, specifically in the School of Communications. And we have had interns that we've hired from the School of Communications to give them exposure to consulting so that they can have, an opportunity for a different career path, because I wish someone would have done that for me.
I love that, a great example of, you're climbing the ladder and you're making sure that people behind you know that it's there and you're helping pull them up. That's huge. And, I want to kind of stay with Howard for a second, that, you know, HBCUs have a very great reputation for staying connected and the just the community that comes with it. And it's inspirational to see. And I think one of the things that had to be instrumental, if not at the very beginning or at multiple times. So I'm going to ask, how did, Howard kind of play into your career over the years and that kind of networking of having that kind of almost built-in family and cheering squad like behind you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, one thing to know, we are an HBCU family. So my daughter just graduated from North Carolina A&T. My son is a junior engineering major at Prairie View. So we are deeply, deeply rooted in HBCU culture and definitely believe in it. I think what it feels like, Brittany, is that no matter where I go in my career, I always have familiarity somewhere, because there's something about that HBCU network. Even if they didn't go to Howard, we have a common understanding. There is a shared experience, like at a baseline, even though it's varied depending on where you go and what you studied. But it's like feeling like you're never truly alone in the world, no matter where you are, and being able to always connect back. And so there have been many times that I've been, working for different clients, or even before I started the company, working at different jobs, and I would find someone else who also went to a HBCU. And it would always feel like, even if we didn't become best of friends, we had a common understanding, sort of like, okay, I see you because I know where you're coming from, you know where I'm coming from. That's a part of it. And then I think professionally, it always helps. I've had so many people that I've connected with on LinkedIn, and we both went to Howard, but we didn't know each other while we were at Howard. But it's enough to be like, oh, you're Bison, I'm Bison, so we're family. Like, and then we sometimes we'll have a conversation and start a working relationship. And in some cases, some of my closest friends have been people who also went to Howard, but we just weren't friends when we were there. And we became really good friends afterwards. So there's just a lot of that connection and community, I think, inherently comes from being a part of an HBCU family, so to speak.
Yeah, it certainly seems, and hopefully most of our members who are watching this, you have some sort of thing that you can tie back into, right? You have your
Yeah.
rally cry, you have your college or university, your tech school, or heck, even where you grew up. My Pittsburgh accent gets me spotted far more often than I would like to admit, and I don't even think I have one. But I love that idea that leaning, not leaning in. You're gathering people with you too. You're bringing interns up, so you're making those connections. And I think one of the questions I want to ask as a follow-up, as a professional, part of your job is getting into the people and the change management and that kind of thing. Do you think that you brought kind of that culture truly of networking and shared experiences? Do you think that bleeds over into the work and the value that you provide to your clients as well? And if so, how might that?
Yeah, I go back to my original statement around my experience in college definitely shaped who I am and how I move around in the world. I also learned a lot how to do things that were high impact. And I think if I think about how that now shapes the work that I do, I say this often. I'm very allergic to busy work, which is why, and I mean like severely allergic, which is why I was an early adopter of a lot of AI tools, because it handles the busy work that I'm like, that's not the best use of my time formatting a spreadsheet. Like, why would I do that? It's, I need to come up with a brilliant idea and the next thing and have vision, but making sure all the columns are aligned, like who cares? And so I've always been very kind of like, I don't want to do the busy work. I want to focus on the things that matter. And it was something that not only I've learned at Howard, but it also was cultivated in just the way I'm matriculated through the university. And so keeping that in mind, I bring that when we're coming into workplaces. And I always say that consultants can be one of two things. They can either be extremely helpful to help you accelerate or reach a goal that you weren't able to reach, whether it's a capacity or a capability issue within the organization. So they can be very helpful, or they can be in the way. They can be another warm body, just doing another thing and taking up space. And I always want to be the former and not the latter. I always want us to be value add wherever we're showing up. And I think a lot of that started with just wanting to and desiring and getting opportunities to do things that were high impact while I was in college.
Oh, great. And I'm gonna shift around a little bit because it is the Women's Energy Network, and we need to get a little bit into some different aspects of your personality.
Sure.
One of the questions that I've really enjoyed hearing the answers on previous Path to Powers, if you haven't watched them, you should. But one of the questions is, how do you think being a woman may have either impacted, it could be positively, it could be negatively, but has it impacted your career in any way that you can, say, that was it, or I've watched this trajectory, and anything like that that you could share with us?
Yeah, I remember in preparation for our conversation, I was reviewing this question and I was like, oh, there's so many, so many aspects, so many ways that I can answer this question. For context, I live in Houston and have worked in Houston over the last 20 years. And so before becoming the CEO of my company now, I did a lot of work in oil and gas as an independent consultant. So I would be on a project for a year at a time, 2 years, et cetera. And, to date, between the work we've done through the company as well as my independent consulting work, I've worked for all the majors except for one. And really, and that's Exxon. And technically, I did some stuff third party through them, for them. So worked through all the majors. My first internship when I was transitioning my career, I actually interned at Baker Hughes. So I have like a lot. I mean, I've worked for Oxy, Shell, Chevron, like all of the majors that we talked about. And so there were always moments, so many that I can't count, where I would walk into a room and it was full of men. They majority were white men, and they would look at me like, "What are you doing here?" I get a lot of questions about, well, where did you go to school and what credentials do you have? And, I think the first few times that happened to me, I felt a way about it. Like, wait a minute, you're not asking anybody else in here about this. And invariably, what would happen is I would take it all in, and then I would actually deliver on a solution to the point where then it would flip and I'm like their best friend, right? Which I'd be like, no, I'm good because remember, you had all these questions about why I should have been here. And I know that a lot of that had to do with my gender as well as my race and my age because I was doing this when I was relatively young. So I was young, I was Black, and I was a woman, and I'm still all those things, by the way. And I was coming into a space where there were not a lot of people who looked like me. So I was working with like petrophysicists and other SMEs who had patents that were really mostly on the upstream side of oil and gas. And I was designing these development programs for new engineers that were coming out of grad school or, transitioning from another role. And so it was always a question of like, wait, why are you here? And I know a lot of that had to do with me being a woman. But on the flip side, so that's sort of the negative side of it. The positive is, as a woman and as a mother, and just a little bit of backstory, I was a single mom for 13 years. And so there was something about the resilience of that experience that I brought with me into the workplace. So I didn't really, what's the word, scare easily, I guess. There was not a whole lot that I would really get frazzled about. I always, still to this day, try to think about workplace problems as these are first world problems. Most of the time, no one is going to die if it doesn't happen. That is the vast majority of the companies we work. No one is going to die. Now, of course, there are exceptions. We're talking about, medical field and that kind of thing. But by and large, in corporate, no one's going to die if it doesn't happen. And I've seen people really have moments where they just fall apart as if someone's going to die. And so, having gone through a lot of challenges in my personal life, and as a woman, as a single mom, as a married mother, as a mother with older kids and younger kids, going through different health challenges, like all of those things, it really gave me the resilience to excel in corporate settings because putting that in context, I'm like, oh, I survived way worse than this. Oh, the project's off schedule? Okay. Oh, this leader is having a moment and they cut somebody out in a meeting. that's unfortunate, but no one died, right? Like we can still move forward. There's still things that can be done. And I'm not going to get sucked into this drama like a lot of times people will have you do. So if I think about the biggest thing, I think it is the resilience that I know has a lot to do with me being a woman and also being a mother.
Yeah, I have a feeling if you asked any one of our members, female identifying members, they'd have a very similar experience of just in a male dominated industry or in an industry when you were a smaller proportion, I would say, of what is normal. So if you're outside the
Yeah.
norm, you have felt this in some sort of
Yeah.
way. My husband feels it every time he goes to a WEN gala, and he's like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Yes, this is what you should feel more of, sir." No. I think this kind of leads into the next question because I think based on the answer you gave, the answers should be clear. But the question is, have you ever felt a need to censor yourself? Which I'll let you take.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, this is something I'm challenged with right now. And not because I necessarily have to answer to anyone, because I do have the privilege of running my own company. However, what I found is that the clients that I work with and the people in the client groups and who work at the company who are not even part of the immediate client group, they pay a lot of attention to what I'm doing outside of the workplace. I found out that there are some clients that follow me on TikTok and I'm barely on there. Like I kind of am on TikTok, I post a little bit and then I quit for like 6 months. And then I'm back and like, oh, I have something to say, right? And it's never anything that is extreme or inflammatory or whatever the case is. Even for the causes that I feel very passionate about, I have found a strategic way to advocate for change is not necessarily loud. Like I found my path with that. And I've also found the things that I can change and control and some of the things that I can work on to really see tangible results, right? So it's not about going on a rant on some social media platform, but there are times that I want to say something and I'm like, but I know this person, this person, this person. And it's not even so much that I feel a way about them knowing how I feel because I will tell them directly. It's just more about, I don't want to deal with that noise. And I definitely don't want to derail any of the progress that we're making in the company. And I have to be mindful that, my voice carries more weight than what I realize. And so it matters to people. They pay attention. I can't tell you how many people, Brittany, I've met in person who have said, oh, I follow all your posts on LinkedIn. And I'm like, but I've never seen you like anything, comment anything. You've never inboxed me. In fact, there's someone at your job, Brittany, who said this to me. And I was like, really? That's so interesting because I didn't know you were paying attention. But because I also am responsible for other people besides me. So I do have team members that I don't ever want to do anything that's going to jeopardize their livelihood either. But it's very difficult because I have a lot of big feelings about a lot of things that are happening in the world that I want to say things about, but it's difficult too because sometimes I'm also advising my executive clients on how they have to shape their programs differently, their messaging differently, really to reduce risk. I mean, I was just in a conversation today about this. And so it feels hypocritical to tell them, like, here are the things that you need to do to make sure that the work is preserved, particularly around things related to DEI, because that has been the big thing over the last couple of years. So here's how you preserve the work, and here's how you need to change the messaging so that the work is preserved, so that the outcomes are preserved. And then for me to then have that conversation with them and then backdoor and go on a rant is kind of like, okay, so I feel very torn about that. And also feel like this is turning into a therapy session because I'm like, I haven't solved for it yet, Brittany. I don't have the solution, but that's one area where I feel censored. I think the other times it's been blatant and direct, where there has been someone in some workplace who has sought to silence me, and not because I was saying anything wrong, but because what I was saying may feel threatening to them. But it's definitely a them problem. It's not a me problem. And so unfortunately that happens more than what I'd like to admit, but that's another area where I've felt censored before.
Yeah, JeNae, I think your point on social media, on LinkedIn, which is a form of social media, it's applicable to all of us, right? We're out there putting out our professional selves, and we have opinions and feelings, and it's tough. Because on one hand, you have people saying you need to post, you need to have a brand, you need to have X, Y, and Z, and then
Yeah.
maybe some people should, think about that before they post. So that's very very fair. Um, I think one of the questions that when I read our prep list that I was hoping you could talk about is, what's the toughest situation that you've overcome, and either professionally or personally, because that's the question. And in the time I've known you, JeNae, you're just inspiring in how you manage things, and I'm just constantly watching you evolve. So this is kind of a personal question too.
I appreciate that, Brittany. I think when I read the question and prep for this conversation, my first thought was, okay, how much do they want to know? How, and I, it's kind of like, because one thing that I have said, and I try to say this as frequently as I can so that people can get something from it. You can look at my bio, you can look at my profile, my resume, whatever it is, and feel like, wow, she has really been successful. Like she has built this company, they've done all these things, it's award winning, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, all those things are true, but there's a lot of failure behind that. There's a lot of tough things. There's a lot of like dark moments that are a part of that journey. And so I don't ever want anyone to look at my personal or professional life and think like, wow, this is just so amazing or something to be envious of, because I'm very blessed. I'm very thankful for what I have, but there's also another side to it. And so when I was thinking about like what are the hardest things I've gone through personally, I have come within inches of my life a couple of times. And unfortunately, twice it was a reproductive issue. So the first time was an ectopic pregnancy that I nearly died from. And this is where I get very passionate about some of the laws that have been passed, because had that doctor hesitated even for a moment on my treatment, I likely would not be sitting here across from you having this conversation. Because there was no time to really think about, well, is this legal? Is this allowed? It was like, you have to have emergency surgery right now. Like it happened at 3 o'clock in the morning, like overnight. There was no waiting time to determine whether or not there was a risk or liability for terminating the pregnancy, because I was hemorrhaging and it had to happen. And then, secondly was with my son Noah, who's 7, just being discharged from the hospital with inflated numbers in my chart around my blood pressure, and it was at stroke level. And so those experiences really shaped me to do a lot of the advocacy that I do with maternal health, because there is a huge disparity, particularly in Harris County where I live, around maternal health. And those experiences are not just my experiences, there are many. So those are some of the personal ones. But professionally, I honestly got to a point where I wanted to throw the company away. I was like, I'm done with this. I sat on the floor in my office and I was like, God, you can have it. I don't want it. I'm like done. I don't want, like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too stressful. Like I've had crazy things happen. Like the IRS changed our EIN number and then let us know 2 years later that they changed it. So for those of you who are not familiar, it's like the Social Security Administration telling you, like, oh, by the way, this Social Security number is not yours anymore. We accidentally gave you two, so you need to use this other one. That has nothing to do with any of the banking records you have, any of your identity anywhere. So it has taken years to even be able to rectify that whole situation. I've been audited by Texas Workforce Commission, which is basically the unemployment group, even though I only had 3 employees at the time. And I really think I must upset somebody somewhere in some place of power because they called it in. It's the only thing I can think of, because they found nothing. We have really great records, and I'm thankful for that. But that happened. I had an ops manager steal money from us and use the company credit card at a pawn shop. I had an executive admin who got extremely drunk at a company function and ordered a whole bottle on the company tab, and also yelled and screamed at like guests and had to be carried out. Should I go on? Like, should I go on?
I'd say
So
that's a pretty good list.
yeah, I mean, it's a lot. So you can see how at some point I'm like, you know what? I don't need to do, I'm just gonna go get a regular job. Someone will hire me. Let me call one of my friends that work at some company and be like, hey, get a job. And I posted about this on LinkedIn, and it was, for me, my faith has carried me through all of these kind of experiences and more. But it was almost like God laughed at me when I said I didn't want any more. And God's like, here you go. I'm gonna give you a little bit more just so you know that you're on the right path. And so, what I can tell you, even through all that breakdown, where the company is now, I have never had more joy and peace and rest than what I have now. And I think that also probably goes into your last question around thinking about like what I would tell people and thinking about like what I want that message to be. About a year and some change ago, I found this book called Rest is Resistance. And that book literally changed my life. But it didn't just change my life in like some kind of philosophical way. It changed my way of operating, my way of moving through the world. So what I tell people now is that if you think about intermittent fasting, I do intermittent resting. So I'm always looking for, it's not that I don't work, it's not that I don't have busy days or busy weeks, but I'm always looking for when is that next point that I can rest. And that has been phenomenally it has made a huge difference in the business and in my life, because even though things are, busy and I got kids and dogs and other things happening, I am not exhausted. Like I don't operate from a place of exhaustion, and I am more impactful. I have made more money in the company. I have the best team that I have ever had. And all of that came from a period of rest. And so that's what I would tell people, and particularly women, because we've been conditioned to think that we have to do all these things, that we have to put forth all this extra effort. And particularly women of color have been told, like, well, you have to do twice as much. And I'm like, sis, no, you don't. You actually don't. But you have to believe that. And you have to know that your rested mind is far more impactful. You have better ideas, you have better strategy. You will energetically see things come to you when you are operating from a place of rest because your spirit is rested. And so that really is what I would leave with people, that we've probably been doing this all wrong. I know I was doing it all wrong. And it's not my physical effort or the amount of hours that I put in that is going to lead to success. It's about really prioritizing and caring for myself and not abandoning myself for this external goal.
I love that. And I think it flies in the face of hustle culture, which so many
Yes.
of us were raised with and told that you had to be doing. And that's great. And there's a time and there's a place. But
Yeah.
sometimes efficiency is the way to go. So, and I think back to what you said. Thank you for sharing that. The Instagram perfect job in this, like there is still that other side too. Like
Yeah.
you do a great job on social media, folks. If you do not follow JeNae on LinkedIn and also interact with her posts, don't just be a lurker. You should engage in these conversations. I think you can tell that you've had time to, like, your stances on AI and how you're thinking, okay, you have the technology, but it's the people that moves things. It's the process that you put in place to do things. So you're an inspirational follow because you have given yourself the time and the space to be inspirational. So I appreciate that last moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining today. And thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this was, if nothing else, you got a new LinkedIn follow and a good book to read too. So JeNae, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate having you here, and I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thanks.